Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your boy 30 Jack, and this is another installment of the series for my YouTube channel, 30 Jack channel, called The Origin Story, or usually called Based on True Story. Everything happened in my life, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's very personal, but this one is very, very different. It's pretty much, it's a fun story to tell, something that really I'm passionate about, mostly number one, wrestling, and number two, podcast. So for this one, I'm definitely talking about the origin of Heel Turn Podcast. If you don't know what Heel Turn Podcast is a podcast about me talking about wrestling from WWE to TNA to New Japan Pro Wrestling, pretty much everything was going on in World Pro Wrestling. And where I host my podcast is take place on Facebook Live at WCC Wrestling Commentary Central, hosted by Chris Dilworth. Big shout out to Chris Dilworth. You can go over there, go to the group, check it out. I'll be there every Saturday at 8 o'clock and 7 on Central. So, before I start this wonderful, great journey of the story, right now I'm playing a little mission from Red Dead Redemption 2. It's for the PS4. So I may change up the name some, I may not, but in this one it's very good story. So I'm about to give out a lot of shout out. So if you would like to hear this story, alright, here it goes. Before I do a podcast, this is the first time I did something like this before. It was, I want to say, back in 2012ish, I remember. Back then when I was doing a special appearance for this group I used to be on called Fans Talk Wrestling, with Garvin, shout out to Garvin and everybody else in the crew, and I'd be there all the time. But the first time being there was I was there as a guest, and I think they was doing a live video, I remember. So I was there and I did this first guest appearance, and I was very hyped. Nervous? Not whatsoever. So I was there, talk about wrestling, and I enjoyed it. I love it, and I expressed myself, about mostly about WWE, pretty much the World Pro Wrestling at the time, and it was so epic. I think we post up on YouTube, and people give thumbs up, some people give thumbs down. We pretty much broke the internet, so it was interesting. It was very, very cool. And not only that, I was part of the FTW group, part of the team where I do blogs, writing for them on the website. And I started writing down about who should be the champions, should Kofi Kingston turn heel to become the WWE champions, everything else, and it was very, very fun as well. And I learned from it, and then moved from being a blog writer. I become, at the time, I kept my own YouTube, and that's what I did my original series I call Eat, Sleep, Play, Talk, Wrestling, Repeat. And I did that, and I showed the gameplay of mostly WWE related, and people really enjoyed it, and including myself. I enjoyed it. I had fun of it, and I talk about wrestling, like I said, and many people really, really dig it and love it. And I try to bring guests to come over just to talk, and even my close family members, should I say friends, family members, my god sis Aaliyah, shout out to Aaliyah. I remember she tried to talk and she was a little bit nervous, but don't be nervous, just just talk, just the microphone, just talk about wrestling. So it was really, really fun, and we did I did a couple of episodes, at least 12 or 13 episodes, and close to the finale of the episode during with the FTW podcast, me and Ishmael, shout out to Ishmael, we did this series. We played Mortal Kombat 10, and the winner would tell the topic. So I was the winner of that, explain the topic of the pro wrestling. Just expanded a little bit. So after that, decided to take down, or should I say cancel, the Eat, Sleep, Play, Talk, Wrestling, Repeat. And I was pretty much bummed because with my YouTube channel and the FTW podcast, we could do something together, think about partnership. them by working with them. And after that, I continuing do my YouTube and continue to do the Eat, Sleep, Play, Talk, Wrestling, Repeat, and I continue doing more of it. And after that, I've been hop around a couple of wrestling podcasts, or should I say, a group, and try to be get into it as well. So after that, I finally stumbled into a WCC, and I went there, and I never forget. I think it was like last. Actually, no, take that back. Before WCC, we were me and my homie Vandale. Shout out to Vandale. We were supposed to do a podcast together, and we talked about it. And I was part of the other wrestling group, Wrestling Anonymous. My homie Beezy, he the one who put me on the wrestling group. Appreciate him for that one. Shout out to Beezy. And while I was there, I was just talk about wrestling and just interact with other people. So after that, I think like a couple of days and weeks, and probably close to like springish, me and Vandale, we started talking about do the podcast. I think that's where I joined WCC. I think during that time I saw they do a little live stream during Extreme Rules. Extreme Rules is like anything goes pay-per-view event during the summer at WWE, and trust me, that was one of the worst pay-per-view I ever seen. So Chris, he hosted that podcast, and I'm like, you know what? Let me go over there and look at the podcast. So I went there and watch it, and I like what they're talking about, and pretty much everybody's open. Nobody call each other by the names and this and that. Unlike the other group, like if you talk shit about WWE, they will crucify you. And trust me, I've been there like multiple occasions. Like you don't want to talk. You don't like. They don't like for me talk about WWE, but but like it's the truth. But once I was there, they do live podcast and talk about Extreme Rules, and they select callers. So I think to myself, you know what? I might as well jump on in and express myself about the Extreme Rules. Chris select my calls. I'm there in front of the camera, and I just express my feeling like right off the back, and to how I feel, and they pretty much enjoyed it and agree with me. Some agreed, some didn't, and it was like pretty cool, and just interact with other wrestling fans. So next week, or should I say next couple of days later, around Thursday, they do a weekly show called Heels for Life podcast. So it was talking about pretty much WWE, TNA, or other wrestling promotion. And during that time, I think like during that time, they were talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor. People don't know what New Japan Pro Wrestling is. It's a Japanese promotion wrestling that takes place in Japan, and Ring of Honor is I could call it a small indies, but I call it like one of the big mainstream professional wrestling in North America. So I heard the news, they're supposed to do a show during the WrestleMania weekend. They broke the news and everybody was hyped. So I want to talk about it. And knowing me, I'm a big fan of New Japan Pro Wrestling. So during that day, Chris talked about it and then do another select call. So I call in, I get selected, and I will never forget it. I just told the truth about it. I say New Japan and Ring of Honor, they're going to destroy NXT, they're going to embarrass WrestleMania, they're going to murk them both. And I say New Japan Pro Wrestling is the Golden State Warriors and WWE is the Cleveland Cavaliers. And it was so truth but funny at the same time. I even made Chris laugh. so I made Chris laugh, I made the people laugh, and everybody enjoyed it. And It was only like 6 minutes, I think. It was like 6 minutes because that's the only time limit they got, and plus, they run on a tight schedule. So after I get off the call from the podcast, the other caller comes in and call me a mark, in which I don't like that shit. I don't like anybody call me any kind of name as a wrestling fan, And people who don't know about wrestling term, a mark, or should I say a smart mark, it means a fans who knows about everything about pro wrestling and act like obnoxious, act like a a dummy, stuff like that. So a couple of days later, or should I say a week later, I'm pretty much like a regular caller, and this be all the time. And I think around a year later, close to the spring, that's where me and Vandale will start talking about doing a podcast. So during that time, me being a regular caller and Vandale and I was talking about do a podcast. During that time, I was in another situation, and plus other stuff for which I'll probably not to talk about it. But so me and Vandale, we start planning some ideas, plan some plans for it, everything else. It was started about setting up, and not only that, during that time, I was still part of the WCC. So, me being a regular guest of the Hughes for Life podcast, I was there, regularly just talk about, the topic. And I never forget, one of the viewers, I forgot the person's name. I think this person, or should I say he, because I remember, I think he's still part of the group. And he say, "Hey Hugh, I think you should have your own podcast." And I read it. Still back in my mind, I'm thinking like, shoot, it's time for me to do a podcast anyway. So during that time frame, me and Vandale supposedly called the podcast we were working on called Strong Style Carolina, and so we made that name up during summer. So everything is set and ready to go, and we still planning some stuff out. So during that time, around like close to the end of summer, I had to go to New York, and I came back from New York. And let's just say I was like Shawn Michaels, I lost my smile. But anyway, so yeah, that's a whole different story. I probably won't tell the story. But anyway, so after I come back to New York, I had to resettle everything, pretty much like a big giant reset. So I been back, still doing podcasts. I should say part of the WCC, and I think close. I would say close to. I think it was like back in October. I think close to. I want to say No Mercy. Ever remember for WWE? But we all talk. Actually, me and Van Davis still talking, and we continue talking. We still keep in touch still, and still part of WCC. So they still continue talking, and then not only that, I think around fast forward to like December, we're still talking, and we still get ready plan set up, and we have a great discussion about Strong Style Carolina, and still talk about wrestling. And I remember one moment that me and Vandale, we have a deep conversation about WWE and New Japan Pro Wrestling. And while we were talking, I think to myself, wow, this is going to be a dope podcast, because we both have different views of pro wrestling, but at the same time, we have love for it. Different views, but sharing the same interests of it. So a month later, around January, almost close to the Royal Rumble. If you don't know what the Royal Rumble is, Royal Rumble is the 30-man, or should I say 30-man and 30-woman Royal Rumble match. It's a big event. It's a kickoff road to WrestleMania. Like the winner of the Royal Rumble earned themselves a title shot to face the champion at WrestleMania. So at that time, it was close to the Royal Rumble. I talked to Vandale, and we Gary set up for the Royal Rumble. I mean, after Royal Rumble, Gary set up for Strong Style Carolina podcast, and he said pretty much his heart was not into it. His heart was in a different business, and to be honest, I wasn't upset because my mindset is like, you know what, I still want to do a podcast, when the time is right. So, so pretty much we talked, and I wasn't, upset about it. No, it was, because we were still cool. We still talk sometimes when we got the chance. And during that time, I still part of the WCC, still, talking. And then I think around close to, no, scratch that. I think back around like either January or February, that's where everybody started doing their own podcast. And I see Beast Mode, shout out to Beast Mode, they're doing the podcast. I seen everybody else. And I think to myself, you know what? It's time for me to pull the trigger. It's time for me to do the podcast. And at that time, I try to think what would be a cool name for the podcast. And I think all kind of names from Heel Takeover to it was a different name I had. I had Heel Takeover, the Heel Show. I thought about talking about Eat Sleep Play Talk Wrestling Repeat. And at one point I thought about doing Thirsty for Wrestling, the same title from the YouTube channel, the same title I used to do for this YouTube channel. But someone bring my idea called Heel Turning or Turning Heel Podcast. So I thought to myself, you know what? That name sticked out the most, like the Heel Turn Podcast. I think to myself, you know what? That sounds good. It just clicks. I said, you know what? Heel Turn it is. So, excuse me, I got a little bit cold. Heel Turn Podcast. And after that, I pick up the good day. I pick up Saturday because Chris doing his show on Thursday, Beast Mode doing his show on Friday. Me, I'm doing the show on Saturday. I think Reese was doing a live viewing of different match before me around 7 o'clock because mine was 8. So I did my first episode of Heel Turn Podcast, and it was, I wouldn't say it was bad, but it was like a learning process because when I do the podcast, the Wi-Fi was in and out, people coming in the room. It was like, it was kind of distracting a little bit, and pretty much it was screwing up the flow. So I always ask for feedback, like, tell me what you think of it. I get some good reviews, talking about, you did a good job, just speak up a little bit louder, and everything be fine. So 2-3 episodes later, I can see myself doing good. My shows do a little bit better. I try to bring people in to talk some more. And episode 4 and 5, episode 4 was good. Got people, guests coming in. Episode 5, I supposed to have a guest, but this dude, I would not mention his name. He was supposed to come up because he talked a lot of crazy nonsense about this black wrestler, Kofi Kingston, who was trying to get attached at WrestleMania, and plus it was a history of making for being the first black, trying to become the first black champion. But he talked a lot of stuff, and I wanted to bring him in, but he didn't show up. It was disappointment. Good show, but it was a big disappointment. And after that, I bring in my friend Ziggy. Shout out my homeboy Ziggy. I bring him in, and we have a ball. We start talking, and the next episode, I bring in Reese. Shout out to Reese, and we have a dope conversation. I think that's one of my favorite episodes. We was talking about New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, conspiracy theories about what's going to happen at the event. It was an awesome conversation. And I try to do like a time limit for my show, but it ran for hours. But ever since then, I enjoy doing podcasts, and I enjoy talking about wrestling with my peers and with my friends and with the fans. Because when you're doing podcasts in front of people and it's been shared all over the place, after I finished recording, I look back, Like the next day, I see like 12 being shared, 13, 23 shared, a couple of views, a couple of comments, and it made it really special because I would never thought it'd be a podcast, but I love to talk about wrestling, and what perfect time for me doing it is doing the podcast through Facebook. And not only that, I enjoyed it. I love doing it. Like every day I have to talk about wrestling. And before I would do the show, I always write down notes, or should I say like a bullet points before doing the show. And I'm still learning. I think the next will be my 6th or 7th episode, I think. I'm trying to plan some ideas for the 10th episode, but that'll be down the road very soon. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed talking about wrestling. I enjoy being in front of the camera. I'm not shy about it. Um, it's a good feeling, and also it's good to see different views. That's one of the best. That's one of my favorite part about doing the podcast. Like I could be on a different podcast, and we always have a different views about it in a respectful manner. Like I say one thing and the other person say the other thing, and most of the time we be agreeing on something, or sometimes we could be disagreeing with one another. And that's the best thing about that is, and we don't have to be disrespect one another. So that's one of the best thing about it. But I enjoy doing it, and hopefully this community, the WCC community, would do big things, and I can see the podcast grow a much larger base, and same thing with the WCC, Wrestling Community Central. So that's how I got my podcast. That's how I got my name. That's how I'll start doing the podcast thing with it. So that's my story. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, leave a comment, leave a like button, subscribe, and share this video and share this channel. Try to get this channel grow much more to the people. Try to bring more reviews to it. Try to entertain my thirsty nations, and you will get more of this content, including a new episode of Best for Business Nasumi Era. It will be out this week. All I gotta do is lay some voiceover, and it will be done hopefully by the weekend. And also, you get more content from me as much as I can, because I'm very a little bit busy, but I try to post some more content. But therefore, I hope you guys enjoy it. Till then, see you guys later. Bye.
John Marston here.
All right, well, if you need any more work, you can find me in town. Or maybe I'll find you.
I'm retired.
Sure. Be well, John.